This is the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show with Jake. The new way Wyoming wakes up.
It's time to take a look at what's happening around Wyoming. From the Cowboy State Daily Newsroom, I'm Wendy Kaur. A young, petite, pregnant woman found dead with beating and strangulation injuries 33 years ago in a ditch 15 miles north of Sheridan has been identified. The woman, who has been known as I-90 Jane Doe for the past 3 decades, has been identified as Cindy Arlene Estrada by the Wyoming Division of Criminal Investigation. Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland says Estrada was one of 2 Wyoming victims in the case of alleged serial killer Clark Perry Baldwin.
I've been watching for this for a while because they identified Bitter Creek Betty, who was found March 1992 off the interstate in Sweetwater County with strangulation and other injuries, killed. And so then a month after that, they found a woman they called I-90 Jane Doe, petite, pregnant, young, also dead with strangulation marks in Sheridan off of the interstate.
Estrada was identified using her mother's DNA. Prior to the publication of this news story, there was essentially no publicly available information on Estrada online. All that's known is that she was born in Torrance, California, and was 21 years old when she was killed. Western Wyoming irrigators are frustrated after having their water shut off earlier than normal to send Colorado River Basin water downstream, despite what appeared to be a promising winter snowpack. Cowboy State Daily's David Madison reports that an upcoming public meeting in Pinedale is one of 4 outreach meetings Wyoming officials are hosting to discuss the state's role in managing Colorado River water.
The mighty Colorado River begins its life in Wyoming and high in the Wind River Range. It feeds into the Upper Green River and the Little Snake River. And so Wyoming is a part of this collective, this compact of states that's charged by Congress in a very old compact to manage that water.
The amount of water Wyoming gets to keep as a member of the more than 100-year-old congressionally created Colorado River Compact will depend on what happens during negotiations over the next several months. If Republicans want to fine-tune their bill to claw back $9.4 billion in federal payouts, including defunding PBS and NPR, they're running out of time. The U.S. House has a legal deadline of Friday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time to vote on the proposed $1.1 billion in cuts to public television and radio. Cowboy State Daily's Sean Berry reports that the cuts are part of a rescissions package, a clawback of funds previously allocated by Congress. By law, these unusual measures must be passed by both chambers of Congress no later than 45 days after formally requested by the president.
It's also something that only requires a simple majority vote. And if you've heard that story before, it's because the Republicans use simple majority vote procedures a lot in order to avoid the 60-vote Senate threshold when they know they're not going to get any help. And now they're doing it this way, by taking existing funding and yanking it from those agencies, in this case, public broadcasting.
As of the time this story was published Thursday, the House was in recess and hadn't voted on the cuts. I'll be back with more news right after this.
Find expert vascular care right here in Wyoming. Wyoming Interventional and Vascular Associates, or WIVA, is a division of Casper Medical Imaging and is home to experienced subspecialized physicians and physician assistants who provide comprehensive services to treat vascular disease. From PAD and AAA to venous disease, WIVA offers tailored solutions to get you back to enjoying the things you love. Schedule a consultation with WIVA today at caspermedicalimaging.net/WIVA or by calling 307-577-1003.
A Yellowstone National Park black bear with a taste for human food and willing to dangerously ransack campsites to get it was lethally removed from the area. Cowboy State Daily's Andrew Rossi reports that a determined adult female black bear had to be killed July 11th after what the National Park Service called a series of concerning incidents at a backcountry campsite in the Blacktail Deer Creek drainage.
The incidents all occurred at a backcountry campsite in the northern section of Yellowstone. And when you're out there, the park mandates that you either suspend your food with these poles or you keep them in a bear-proof box. Well, this black bear had previously crushed a tent, but it also figured out how to pull down those poles to get at the food that was being stored overhead. So because it had shown such intelligence and such potentially dangerous behavior and gotten a reward out of it, Yellowstone staff decided the only thing that that they could do to ensure everyone's safety was to kill the bear and remove it from the park's population.
This was the first black bear to be put down by Yellowstone wildlife officials in 5 years. And that's today's news. Get your free digital subscription to Wyoming's only statewide newspaper by clicking on the daily newsletter button at cowboystatedaily.com. I'm Wendy Core for Cowboy State Daily. It's time to take a look at what's
Christopher Holton. I'm very active. It was a Saturday morning. Normally I go for my normal walk.
With no warning, Chris suffered a near-fatal heart attack. But thankfully, Brian Buckley, a bystander, saw him collapse and rushed to help.
He did this big gasp for air and then just stopped. It's like I went into autopilot. It's like all that training I did back in the day around CPR just magically came out of nowhere.
Because of the CPR training that Brian received, Chris did make it and didn't die on the trail that day. CPR training provided by the American Heart Association.
Looking at your hands, these two hands could save a life.
Being a father, you want to be around. You want to be around for your kids.
Heart disease is America's #1 killer. To learn more about how the American Heart Association helps save lives, go to helpheart.org.
Well, happy Friday. Shireen, the Adventure Queen, filling in for Jake this morning, Cowboy State Daily Morning Show. Glad to be here. It's a beautiful morning here in central Wyoming. I hope the same wherever you are at and you are watching or listening in your neck of the woods. But it's Friday, my favorite day of the week, getting ready for a great weekend where I'm located, and really just Wyoming and the Northwest and the Rockies as a whole definitely thrive in the summertime, so there's no shortage of activities. But again, thanks for being here. I'm Shireen Herrera, filling in for Jake. For those of you that don't know me, I live in central Wyoming. I've been doing radio for 17, going on 18 years, which shocks me half the time. Time goes so fast, but I do a lot of media, podcasting, community events. Love to fly fish, although since I got engaged, I haven't been fly fishing much. It seems like wedding planning has taken over my life, but love Wyoming. Lived in Montana most of my life, so have a lot of connections, Montana, Wyoming. Worked in Idaho for a little bit and Boise for a couple of years, but at that same point, I was still on air in Wyoming and Montana as well. So that's a little bit about me for those of you that are looking at the video disappointed that wonderful Jake is not here with us this morning, but taking some much needed time off, much deserved as well. Jake is a tank, man. When it comes to working in the summer, he does a lot of different things. So good for him. Hopefully getting to sleep in a little bit this morning, but ready for a great weekend, ready for a great show. I think I wanted to start off because the big news this morning, and it kind of came overnight. So you might see some different stories. People are still talking about the funding for National Public Radio and Public Broadcasting Service, so NPR and PBS. And so late last night, though, the word came out that by a 216 to 213 vote, the U.S. House on Thursday approved a Trump administration plan to rescind all taxpayer funding of NPR and PBS. So again, you might see some posts and stuff that were made late last night that people were talking and curious what was going to happen and didn't quite know yet, but it came late last night. The word came out that they did vote 216 to 213. House votes to defund NPR and PBS. Again, that is a breaking story with cowboystatedaily.com. So you can, let me see if I can share my screen here. There we go. All right. Big news this morning right here. Man, I love Sesame Street. That's always a bummer there. But here's the details for you. The measure also cuts $7 billion for U.S. aid, which will now go to President Trump's desk for his signature today. So we'll find out more. And of course, Cowboy State Daily will keep us in the know on that. So head to cowboystatedaily.com. This is the big story of the day. The House votes to defund NPR and PBS. A lot of folks have been talking about this. This has been the main topic, it seems like, especially in media. I've been in media for almost 18 years here. So details again, cowboystatedaily.com. You can check that out. Up-to-date information That's what CDS is doing, Cowboy State Daily here. So, of course, there's a lot of things, posts and stuff that were made, even some, audio about this because people were not sure what was going to happen in the vote. And here it is right there, cowboystatedaily.com. So, again, you can get that breaking information. You can also subscribe now up in the right corner. You see up above that picture of Bert and Ernie. You can subscribe now to the Cowboy State Daily newsletter and get this breaking information. It came right into my email this morning, bright and early. So I was able to read this information and get the details because I was also curious, like many folks, on what was going to happen with NPR and PBS. So Cowboy State Daily has the deets for you, as they always do, and I love that. So let's check in a little forecast because the most famous forecast weatherman, not only in Wyoming, but in many other states. I would put Colorado as well and some neighboring states. Mr. Donde.
It's Friday, TGIF. It's the 18th day of the month, 2025. This podcast brought to you by the Advocates Injury Attorneys. If you've been injured in an accident, don't face it alone. Get an experienced local Wyoming attorney on your side. Free consultations at WyomingAdvocates.com or call 307-800-1952. You deserve an advocate. Well, the Elk is looking up, checking out the weather, and, well, we should. We got a small monsoonal plume coming our way. This will give us a general increase in thunderstorm coverage. Got my fingers and toes crossed that for those of you in western Colorado, western Wyoming, and parts of Utah and New Mexico can get some badly needed rain. There is moisture available for rain-producing thunderstorms, but lately they've just been starting fires with a lot of lightning strikes. A general warming trend after unseasonably cool weather this week will head into the weekend and next week. On Wednesday, you know that Rapid City had a high of only 56 degrees? Quite remarkable, that cold front, but now it's exiting the region. There's some interesting things to watch next week, especially the Front Range and adjacent plains towards the middle of next week, and we'll show you why we're kind of keeping a close eye on things. Yesterday, we did see the clouds thin out, but they hung low as moisture still behind that cold front hung around, but did make for a beautiful sunset with some virga there and some weak showers around the Casper area. Then a great shot there from Grand Teton National Park. As we look at the drought monitor, wanted to spend a little bit of time on this to kind of highlight what's going on, because one thing that will drive you crazy, and I know it's driving some people crazy, is that precipitation never falls evenly in the Intermountain West and the adjacent high plains. You have winners, you have losers, and a lot of times, sometimes you just seem like you can't catch a break when it comes to rain. But the latest drought monitor shows several things, and a lot of times to really understand the current situation is to go back in time a little bit. But generally speaking, since spring, there has been really big improvements right here. I mean, really big improvements in drought conditions. But along and west of the Continental Divide, it's been a different story. And if you notice, there's this bridge, this peninsula of dryness that is sticking out of east central Wyoming into Nebraska's panhandle and into central areas of South Dakota, where drought conditions still are kind of hanging on tough, and then the western slope as well. So let's go back in time. This is May 6th. This is when we went through March and April with very, very unimpressive precipitation in the region. Then things really turned the corner beginning the month of May and certainly into June and into early July in some areas. But this area I want to show you right here, we'll focus on first. We had talked earlier in videos that droughts are like puddles. The droughts tend to shrink along the edges, and then the last area to get out of the drought is in the middle of the puddle. And this really, that example I gave you is really showing up here when we kind of look especially at this area here, where the last area to get, or hopefully to get precipitation, is going to be developing. So this is for early May. You can see western slope, western areas of Wyoming dry, but as you'll see in a minute, drier now. If we go and take a look at where we are now with the latest drought monitor, you can see there's been big improvements here, but western Wyoming and western Colorado have seen drought conditions worsen while they got a whole lot better right here. But notice this little patch right here in Platte County, Wyoming, and northeastern Albany County. along the Laramie River, then part of the North Platte system. That is the middle, okay? That's the middle of the puddle, kind of right here. And the middle of that puddle is this not getting the precipitation that other areas had, like southeastern Wyoming, the Front Range of Colorado, and then, of course, the wet areas of northeastern Wyoming sent spring in many locations. Then the western slope has gotten conditions, the drought conditions, if you look at the change in the last 10 weeks, the green and the blue areas show where the rain has really returned and drought conditions have really improved. The yellow shows where drought conditions have gotten worse. So it's a hodgepodge across the Intermountain West, and then you have islands. You end up with islands, like there's a little island here, there's that island right here in Platte County. Rain never has and never will fall evenly where everybody gets into the action. There's always winners and losers in the casino of precipitation that we live in. Satellite photos that we have right now this morning show that the cooler, moist air with that cold front has advanced into the plains. You can look really carefully. You can see that deeper moisture plume right there, and it really shows up. There it is, 2 areas of subtropical moisture kind of coming up from the south here. Then there's this arch right here. And this arch is where the thunderstorms will be most active this afternoon, but also an area right here, slowly moving to the north and then to the northeast as we progress through the day today. And the precipitable water is impressive. So we're well over 100% of average. Then there's that deeper axis right here. If you're underneath this axis, there is the likelihood of some really good rain-producing showers and thunderstorms, really anywhere in the boundary that I've drawn right here and right here. And you can really see that in the storm, go back here to the Storm Prediction Center of where they think the most active and strongest thunderstorms will end up by late afternoon and evening. And it's right along this axis. That's where that moisture plume will be by later today, along with the stronger daytime heating. Tomorrow, it's more along and aligned the Front Range and then out onto the eastern plains. So today and tomorrow, there's going to be a fair amount of subtropical moisture and thunderstorm activity. By Sunday, there's a punch of drier air coming in, and then we see the moisture that's deeper for the thunderstorms. That'll be more out into the plains. Let's step through the next 3 days, today through Sunday, in terms of thunderstorms. So here's where the thunderstorm action is going to be most likely today, and where some of these thunderstorms are potentially going to be strong in some locations. They'll continue into the evening and nighttime hours. On Saturday, you can see that arch now is more east. There'll be mountain thunderstorms still on the backside of it in the middle here. And then as we get into the day on Sunday, there's that bigger push east out into the plains. So really it's today and Saturday where thunderstorms will be most active, more out into the plains on Sunday, lesser thunderstorm activity here during the day Sunday. There'll be a few, but today and tomorrow is when most of the action will be. Now down here, there's still moisture, so that will still keep showers and thunderstorms going. Far eastern Colorado, western areas of Kansas as well, you'll still be into the mix. Temperature-wise, if we look at temperatures from today through the middle of next week, you can still see the coolness in the north. We're starting to see this heat build that we talked about yesterday in the Central Plains as that high-pressure ridge gets established. But relative to the 30-year average of temperatures, we're still cooler in the far west and across the areas of Canada. Not by a lot, but enough to kind of take the edge off the summer heat. Today, we've got the 500 millibar chart looking like this. High over Florida, the low up here in the Pacific Northwest, and generally a zonal flow. And this low is associated with that monsoonal plume coming on up. So basically, that monsoon moisture plume comes up and gets pushed off to the east rather quickly. That's what happens late Saturday into Sunday. As we get into next week, this is for Sunday. Then as we go into next week, we start to see the establishment of the trough in the Pacific Northwest, the high here in the south. What I want you to look at, and this is what we're watching for next week. Don't know if this is going to come to fruition, but you always look at weather charts like this and you look for patterns. Because what we see here with the colors, the brighter, redder, pinker colors show the warmer parts of the atmosphere at 18,000 feet. As you get further north, as you'd expect, you get colder, and you have the contrast between the colder air up here, the warmer air down here. These black lines represent where the winds are going to flow at 18,000 feet. And where you see little dimples, where you see troughs where you see high pressure ridges, you start to look for patterns. What I see right here is something interesting. What we're seeing right here, that little dimple right here, is part of the tropical, it really has not evolved into a tropical storm, but it has caused a lot of rain along the Gulf Coast. And it is traveling westward because it's caught up in the circulation of this high. Now, this is for Sunday. So that little, what you see that dimple is actually a subtropical wave that got started here and has just gone like this. It's heading westward, which is interesting. Now, we'll fast forward here a couple of days beyond Sunday and show you why we're watching it. As we get into Wednesday of next week, see the dimple? There it is again. So basically, it will have traveled, believe it or not, from here to here over the course of a week. You might think, well, how could that happen? Well, it happens because the counterclockwise circulation around that high. So we're going to watch this because this system gets caught up around the high like this, and believe it or not, it's going to go all the way around. It could go full circle. That's why the weather's fun to watch. If you pay attention to little patterns like this on forecast charts, you start to look for patterns in the 500 millibar flow. So what we watch here is the spinning motions of the atmosphere, what we call vorticity. So let's focus in a little bit on this for next Wednesday. So this would be Cheyenne Day during Cheyenne Frontier Days. So if it does make it all the way into New Mexico, this little upper level low right here, the air is not only moving counterclockwise aloft, but there's a spinning motion called vorticity. Think of a spinning ice skater when they go up and put their arms together. You just have some spinning motion. And this is going to want to come this way as it gets caught up in the flow around the high. So when we look at the vorticity, which is this shaded area, by Wednesday of next week, you can see that right here, the colors show where the spinning motion of the atmosphere is. If we were to loop this, you can really see what I'm talking about. So I want you to pay attention when this loop starts to this area right here over Louisiana, East Texas. Then follow it. And then you can see there it goes. So watch closely. Moves west, goes northeast, and curves around and goes back around that high. Well, why is that important? Well, if we've got a subtropical wave coming through into the Rockies, then moving north, and also watch closely here, you'll see some of that color come up out of Mexico and kind of join it, kind of joining forces right here. Two armies coming together. And then if we look at the subtropical moisture by Wednesday of next week, it's deep. So I highlight this because the middle of next week, if we get these things combined and go together, we'll be producing a lot of thunderstorm activity. And this is where you get extremely heavy rain potential with some of these showers and storms. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but this is why the podcast is fun to do. We're putting a bug in your ear, and let's watch it. That wave may go into Texas and get diverted this way. It may go and get diverted this way. It may not happen, but we're watching it, so stay tuned on Monday. As we take a look at next week's weather, you can see the heat getting going in Missouri, Kansas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas, and Texas here with that high getting established. But what's been really interesting this summer so far is you have not heard on the news about a heat wave in California. Look how cool California is going to be next week. The Pacific Northwest as well. And the way the pattern's unfolding this summer, at least here for another week or 10 days, the temperatures in the far western United States will be below average while the heat will build in the central U.S. Have yourself a great Friday and a good weekend. See you Monday.
Wyoming is a big state. There's so much ground to cover, so many stories to tell. But the Cowboy State Daily News team is up to the challenge. I'm Wendy Core, host of Cowboy State Daily Video News. Whether it's politics in Cheyenne, energy issues in the Powder River Basin, or grizzlies in Yellowstone, our talented crew of experienced journalists are out there finding and telling the stories that matter. What's the best restaurant in DuBois? Renee Jean checks it out. What's the most recent Supreme Court decision mean to our everyday lives? Claire McFarland explains. How is the upcoming elk hunting season shaping up? Mark Hines lets us know. Every day, I talk to the reporters who are covering the topics, issues, and people that are important to Wyomingites, and in our daily newscast, I bring you those stories. Tune into the Cowboy State Daily Video Newscast every morning, only on CowboyStateDaily.com. This is the Cowboy State Daily Radio Network.
Gracie and Pedro might not get along so well.
You're standing on my tail.
But there's one thing they agree on. There's a right seat for everyone.
Oh, that's the good stuff.
Whether you're a dog,
Hold on, Pooch.
a cat, a fish, or a rat.
And I am a ferret.
Be sure to travel safe.
How can you be so sure?
I'm absolutely positive.
On your next adventure, make sure your children are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat.
So I wanted to talk with you and your mom today, Lily, because some people at school have noticed changes going on with you, and we're concerned.
Like what? Who?
Some of your friends, teachers. It sounds like you've lost interest in a lot of things lately. You're hanging with new friends.
So?
So, individually, maybe those things are no big deal, but taken together, and then the incident the other day, you were with Derek when he was caught selling marijuana.
Yeah, he was selling it.
Honey, we know. But we care about you and want to know what's going on.
That's right. We just want to understand better and see how we might help. And if weed is a part of it, we just want to make sure you understand the negative consequences for someone your age, the physical and mental health effects, the poor decision making, and the confusing legal aspects these days. So what do you say? Can we talk?
For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Come on! Go, Diane! Yeah, keep it going! Yeah! Go, honey!
If you love them enough to drive an hour to cheer them on as they get beat 11-0 in the rain, then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the-right-seat to make sure they're correctly buckled in the back seat.
Throw that ball, Diane! Woo! You got this!
MyLifeAsALandlord.com. Dr. Jennifer Salisbury is joining the show. All right, let's first start off. Tell the folks just a little bit about your.
Lives there. My mom ended up becoming a programmer in Albuquerque and ended up doing programming for the telescopes on Maui. And so she got transferred to Maui while in high school. My sister and I both went to the U.S. Naval Academy. And so there was this transition time where she was traveling quite a bit to Maui. And when my sister and I both graduated the Naval Academy, we went to our ships and our training. My mom says, "This is crazy. I'm not traveling anymore." And so she ended up moving to Maui, which is ironically where I live now. She now lives in San Antonio, Texas, which is where I am recording this. And so when I was there in Maui, after I got out of the Navy, I ended up heading back to Maui and regrouping on what I was doing. I was a nuclear propulsion engineer. And so I'm very analytical, extremely list oriented. I'm very A plus B equals C, and wanted to really figure out, what do I really want to do when I grow up? And so I decided I'd go back to school, earn some master's degree, earned a doctorate in education. That's why I'm Dr. Jen. I don't normally use that, by the way, and most people don't even know I have
Sorry.
so many school degrees. I just really like school. In fact, I've really considered renaming the podcast The Nerdy Landlord because I think that's more appropriate.
I love that, though. And I think you should own that. You earned that doctorate.
The Nerdy Landlord with Dr. Jen. Yeah. But along the way in Maui, I met this Canadian named Michael Salisbury, and he's a contractor builder and a complete cowboy when it comes to business. He was a logger in British Columbia, north of Vancouver, and just decided one day in his logging time that he was tired of paying for a helicopter. And so he just decided that he would buy one. And 3 years later, he did. With his best friend, went to pilot school and ended up being the pilot for the helicopter. And he did. And who does this kind of stuff? He read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. That was one of the reasons he and I got connected, is this one book. Completely recommend that above all other books. If people are looking for a business book, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon is by far one I can recommend the most. And so I met Mike Salisbury, and he was this contractor builder, really a go-getting kind of guy, total visionary, complete opposite from me. I was a military lemming, analytical, go here, do this, wear this. And he was like, yeah, we're not doing that. Yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to do that. Okay, we got to apply for a building permit. Okay, you apply for the building permit. I'm just going to start building. That's the kind of thing that started
I
happening.
like it.
And as a result, we got married and instantly had an immigration nightmare. And because I'm American, he's Canadian. And it took 2.5 years to unsort all of that. And he ended up getting his green card. And I talk about all this on the podcast about immigration nightmares and assumptions that people make when two people of different countries get married. And I talk about the pain that we went through and the great inconvenience that we went through, because, of course, this was all happening right as the housing recession in the US was happening. He
Oh,
and I both
no.
lost houses during all that. We were apart because he was in Canada. I was traveling back and forth between the US and Canada at the time. And I ended up moving to Canada because it was just too much, too crazy. And the housing market was just, it was really depressing with the recession in the US at that time. And so we moved to Canada, and I became a Canadian citizen. He ended up building houses, building and then selling and building and selling. And so we moved quite a bit. We really didn't have a whole lot of money. We were shooed out of the US getting his immigration stuff figured out. And then we got to the point where we couldn't sell the house. He built a house and couldn't sell it, and we couldn't sell it, and the market wasn't supporting this. And I was like, what are we going to do? We've got to do something. And so we ended up realizing that if we rented the house, that we rented it out, and we found there was a niche in the local market in Canada, north of Vancouver, a little town called Paul River, just inside of Vancouver Island, but on the mainland, that there were professionals who wanted larger units that had dogs. That was the profile. And it seemed that there was a lot of people who had pets that could not find pet-friendly units that wanted larger units. That's what we had. And he said, let's change up our model. Let's not just build and sell. Let's build and rent. And that changed. And so we built and rented. And I was like, okay, so now what? Because normally we'd build and sell, and then we buy the next one and build and sell, and then we move each time, right? And so it's, oh my God. So I got really good at moving us in laundry baskets. Like, it was, it's not a big town. It was, people would be like, oh, you like to move? And I'm thinking, no, I don't like to move. I just don't, I like to eat. We have to eat.
So is that when
So
you became landlords?
that's when we officially became landlords in 2007. And then we ended up just really understanding more and more. So he built a second home. And I remember the first time he put a mortgage on that second home, I couldn't believe it. I said, we own 2 houses.
Crazy.
And somebody gave us a mortgage on both. You know that commercial where they go, start the car. And the ladies, hurry, run out of the parking lot. Oh my God. That's how I felt. It was like, it was totally the deal that changed. I could not believe we got the second mortgage. We ended up renting that one too. We did it several more times, ended up creating a great team along the way. And then we were probably 5 years into it. By this time, Mike's immigration stuff had gotten resolved. We were able to go back to the US, but the economy hadn't recovered yet. So we changed up our business model. We were looking at how much grief to dollars ratio is each unit given us. Should we keep everything? And so we were like, we could sell. The market was changing. And so we ended up selling everything that wasn't a fourplex. So we kept everything that was basically 4 units or more. And that's what we still have to this day. And I have an amazing team who are probably listening to this, which is awesome. And I've got great tenants. And the thing is, we take great care of our tenants because we treat them how we would want to be treated. And it's that simple. We're not slumlords.
Right.
We have simple rules in landlording. And so when people ask, how on earth do you live in Hawaii, but you have rentals in Canada? I have great people around me. That's the answer. We've done a lot of work and a lot of system building, which is becoming this nuanced thing of build your systems, whatever that's supposed to mean. So we talk about all that on the podcast, which is why I started the podcast, is because so many people were asking us how we do it.
And it's interesting because my life as a landlord is more than just about being a landlord. You mentioned there are conversations and topics that you tackle that go beyond those lines. And as you navigate the podcast and you learn about landlord and tenant issues and you expand, how is that process? Do you have to read encyclopedias? Because every state and every country seems different.
Every location is different. And so when I get approached, typically on social media, but I have people email me as well through the website or through Spotify, Apple Podcast Radio. There's people that, or Instagram, people will make comments and ask questions. And they'll say, hey, what about this? What about this? And I instantly have to go back and say, what province are you in? What state are you in? What territory are you in? Oh, you're in the UK. Oh, you're in Queensland, Australia. Each one of those locations has its own tenancy law or tenancy code that is their marching orders. That's their law. And so I could answer them for British Columbia if they're in British Columbia, but not if they're maybe in the different areas of Vancouver, because here's another example, New York State and then New York City, just like Washington State and Seattle, they have different tranches of rules based on where you are. And so I can only do so much on the podcast, but I will say, look, call your local city hall or whoever you pay your property taxes to, your county or your regional district, and ask the question, who do I talk to about this? I give some ideas on Google. I try to give as much resources away to get people started, to let them know being a landlord and treating another human like a human is universal. But the rules that you play by in your rentals change, very geographic dependent.
But I do enjoy that you have a lot of episodes that do tackle Nebraska and Texas. And so if you are somebody who's becoming a landlord or is a landlord in a certain state, if you look back at the podcast for My Life as a Landlord, you'll probably find one that has some pretty good information for your area.
What's really interesting is because I'm such a nerd for both US and Canada, I've gotten quite a list of about 20 different points that I look at. Late fees. How does each state, province, territory do late fees? What about, do they define landlord retaliation? If they do, what's the time limit? Because there'll be a time limit where they say, okay, you can't apply, a landlord can't try to evict a tenant or give a rent increase for a tenant for a certain amount of time, 6 months, 3 months, whatever it is. And so there's all these different certain things that I look at and I go, oh, that's interesting. Oh, this one it defines normal wear and tear here, but it doesn't say anything about that. That's interesting. Or, for example, in Texas, you must change the locks between each tenant. It's a requirement. That's not a requirement anywhere else I've studied yet. So I'm seeing all these weird nuance things where that's interesting. Or sometimes, like the other one in Texas that I have to laugh at is that you cannot, as a landlord, you cannot restrict a tenant's legal right to bear arms, which you have the Second Amendment in the United States, right to bear arms. But in Texas, they make it now a state aspect of the law. And nobody else talks about handguns.
I feel like Wyoming, where I'm at, Jen might have that law as well. So.
I haven't studied Wyoming yet. I'll let you know.
Oh, I hope you do. MyLifeAsALandlord.com is a great resource. I love your website, Jen. I do have a question on some goals and expanding for the podcast. Are you looking at being a landlord? You're already a landlord in 2 countries. Are you looking at expanding?
Yes, we are looking to be landlords in different states. We're actually multifamily unit owners already in Canada. In the US, we're already doing all kinds of expansions there. And I'm actually getting approached by folks saying, hey, maybe we want to know more about how we can help support you in doing more. Do we want to go overseas? We were just in Australia for 7 weeks, Australia and New Zealand. And my husband and I were looking around Queensland, Australia specifically, going, this is pretty nice. And the Olympics are coming in 2032 to Brisbane. Maybe we should do some investing down here. It's just exploding down there. And they're having very similar problems as the US and Canada with shortages in housing, costs, rental costs, quality or cost of living, everything's going up. And so are we going to expand into other countries? Debatable. I think we've got enough jurisdictions right now that I think we'll just probably stick to Canada and the US.
Yeah, you've had enough to deal with too. And again, just congratulations to you and your husband for what you've grown. Thanks. And your team as well. You did mention something real quick. I'd love to get your thought on that. We have a big issue here in where I'm at outside of Jackson Hole, Wyoming, which is Teton County, the richest county in the country, actually, in the whole entire United States. And so we have a big issue with not affordable housing, but just attainable housing, period, in general. Mm-hmm. And so your concept of the podcast isn't about these big multi-million-dollar homes that you rent out. It's about these affordable and attainable properties.
Honestly, my podcast is about humans treating people like other humans and being able to become financially free enough that you have choices to do what you want with your time. And that's really what it's about. I get approached by a lot of people saying, I have no money. but a lot of energy, and they're usually young, but not all of them. I've had 60-year-olds have this conversation with me saying, where should I start? And I always say the same thing: buy a duplex, move into one side, and rent out the other. That is going to force you to not only live at your place, it'll be your primary residence, so your lending will be good. Realistically, hopefully you've got good credit, but then it's also going to make you become a landlord, and you're going to be in relatively tight quarters with this tenant. And you know what? Good on them. So that's where people start. And there are lots of people who want to talk about scaling up to tens of thousands of units. Fantastic. That is awesome. Ken McElroy, please listen to his YouTube show. That's great. That's not where we are. We're way more grassroots.
And are you seeing some of that as you look for properties or just navigating the landlord realm? Because I know you're a nerd. You've already said that. So I know when you go to wherever you go, you're looking up property information and what's around and all of that. So are you seeing that crunch on the affordable and attainable housing for folks?
We are. And what we're seeing is we're seeing innovation happen. In fact, we're helping innovation happen in Canada. We are actually developing a 48 unit RV park in Powell River, BC, north of Vancouver. But people think RV park, you think instantly, you think transients. No, it's not transients. It's for 6 months or longer. I don't want travelers. That is a different mindset. I want someone who's going to live there for a while. They're just going to bring their own home, or I will have a home that they can rent. And so you've got these little standalone homes, which is ultimately what people want, is they want their own four walls. They want a little yard for their doggie, right? And I'm talking whether this is their first rental out of mom and dad's, or this is the rental after they've sold the big house, after the empty nesters have all gone. So you've got this in between going on that is the new affordable housing. I call it innovative housing.
I love
and so
it.
this is where Mike and I are both going, let's meet where people are actually wanting to live. And let's take the Salisbury business model of creating communities that we would live in because we do. And let's do that on a larger scale.
I can't wait to see where you guys go and how my life as a landlord kind of molds and shapes as you continue to grow and also just share your experience and knowledge. Jen, you're going on 20 years that you've been a landlord here in a couple of years. So you have ample experience, ample knowledge too. And I know a lot of folks have a dream of being a landlord, and what Jen and her crew does, it's real life. You're traveling and you're checking. You live this cool lifestyle. Don't you?
Cool or crazy. It is cool and crazy. We work our butts off, but we set it up that we can do that. We were just in Australia. We were in New Zealand. And what did we do? We were in North Island, New Zealand. We went to Hobbitown. We went where they filmed Lord of the Rings.
Oh, I love it.
And it was all these beautiful little spot in the hill where they have the round doors, the round colored doors. So we went there. We were like the first tour of the day. We get there and we go to this cute little cafe. I was like, let's just get a cup of coffee and a scone or something. Let's just get something really quick and then we'll go on the tour. So we go on the tour. Phenomenal. We come back, we go back to the cafe. Instantly, our phones are going off. The cyclone is hitting Australia. Our flights have been canceled. This is happening, that's happening. And I said, okay, they have great Wi-Fi here. They have great food here. And that table right over there has a plug underneath it. Go get my laptop, will you? So I sat there for 5 hours in the cafe at Hobbiton, rebooking flights. We paid a deposit on a property that we were putting in escrow. And so answering emails, we were applying for building permits on Maui. There's a bunch of stuff that was all happening at the same time. And where were we? We happened to be at Hobbiton because they had good Wi-Fi and I had electricity.
And you could work there. That's so cool. You have anything that's coming up? Any episodes you're really excited about?
I am always excited when I do the location specific episodes. And so I'm trying to do 10 location specific episodes quarterly, trying to do as many as I possibly can. I've already done the first tranche. And so that's where you mentioned Nebraska, Texas. I did New York, California, Washington, and I did British Columbia, Hawaii. I did several in the first tranche, April 1st. So the next tranche is already in the queue to get recorded. And I'm really excited because they're all different. I'm excited because there's what I'm going to deem is the perfect mix of what the perfect tenancy law could look like. Everything that should be contained. What could this look like? How do you not go too crazy on rent control, but you have some ability to increase rents? there is a balance in there. And I don't think anybody does it perfect. And maybe it doesn't exist, but that's where I'm chasing is what does that perfect tenancy law look like? And it may not even be in North America. That's what's fun. UK does some amazing landlording stuff. I know I'm going to end up going over there studying what London does because you have to be licensed to be a landlord. Your unit has to be registered and inspected. Renovations are not suggested, they're required. So all these different things are going. The city of Berlin owns 300,000 rental units.
Oh, wow.
Could you imagine like the city of New York owning 300,000 rental units? Like what a train wreck that would very likely be. No offense to city of New York, but it just seems that the thinking is different when you go to different locations. When you're talking housing, it is just different. And so I love that my international experience is able to pull in all these different ideas of going, Singapore does it this way. Have you guys ever thought of it this way? Or Whistler had a housing shortage, just like what you were talking about. There are all these really high-end homes in Whistler and high-end hotels in Whistler, and none of their staff could afford to stay there. And there wasn't any units for them to stay there. So what did Whistler do? They built purpose-built affordable housing for their staff. And then their housing authority created a pool to put affordable units in perpetuity. It's the most amazing business model I've ever seen. We actually been talking about it in Hawaii as well. That's where we're going with some of this.
All right, I love it. My Life as a Landlord podcast, joining the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Want to stay in touch with what's happening around Wyoming? I'm Wendy Core, host of the Cowboy State Daily video newscast. From Mountain View to Upton, from Jackson to Cheyenne, our reporters are out there finding and telling the stories that matter. Every day, I talk to the talented journalists who are covering the topics, issues, and people that are important to Wyomingites. And in our daily newscast, I bring you their stories. Tune in to Cowboy State Daily video news every morning, only on CowboyStateDaily.com.
Wyoming is a big state. There are so many stories to tell, and here at Cowboy State Daily, we pride ourselves in bringing those stories to you every day. I'm Riley Strand, videographer and production assistant for Cowboy State Daily Video News. Every day, host Wendy Core and I talk to the experienced journalists who are covering the topics, issues, and people that are important to Wyomingites. And in our daily newscast, we bring you their stories. Tune in to Cowboy State Daily Video News every morning, only on CowboyStateDaily.com.
You're listening to the Cowboy State Daily Radio Network.
In today's digital world, it's hard to know who to trust. Your local TV and radio stations bring you the facts. Misinformation and deep fakes flood social media, but broadcasters deliver verified and accurate news. For news, emergency updates, sports, and entertainment, turn to your local stations. Text TV to 52886 and urge Congress to support the vital local journalism broadcasters provide.
I don't think many kids in my son's school even do it.
He makes fun of his friend who vapes.
He would never try it.
She's into soccer.
She's on the honor roll.
She's just not the type.
No way.
No way.
No way.
No way, my kid would never vape.
Get your head out of the cloud. Today, nearly 8,000 kids will start vaping, maybe even yours. Learn about the dangers at talkaboutvaping.org.
Breathe. Love what you do and you've already won, my parents used to say. My parents whose smiles were my first finish line, who championed respect, whose resilience built mine. Even more than I wanted a gold medal, I wanted a heart of gold, like the mentors who were my balance beams refusing to let me down, and the coaches who spoke out to anything out of bounds, heroes who never stood on podiums, but stood up for me. Every shot I made, give the assist to those who since my youth were referees, ready to blow the whistle and end abuse.
Welcome back to the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show. Glad to be here on this Friday. Shireen, the Adventure Queen, filling in for Jake. Big news this morning. CowboyStateDaily.com has the deets for you. But the details on the House voting to defund National Public Radio and Public Broadcasting Service, NPR, and PBS. The news came out late last night. Cowboy State Daily, of course, has the information, though, for you, which I really appreciate. So yesterday, obviously, a lot of stuff up in the air. People were wondering what was going to happen. But by a 216 to 213 vote, the U.S. House approved a Trump administration plan. This was late last night. Again, reminder, to rescind all taxpayer funding for NPR and PBS. So the full story is online for you. Talks a lot about why and what else is involved, the U.S. aid as well, which will be heading to President Trump's desk today. So you can read this story and find out more if you've been following it. I'm in media. I have definitely been following it and curious what would be happening with NPR and PBS. The one thing that I found interesting was the future portion of the article, which comes from folks with Wyoming PBS and just kind of their thoughts on what the future is for PBS in general. So find that story. Again, this is breaking news with Cowboy State Daily, CowboyStateDaily.com. Again, a lot of folks have been talking about NPR and PBS quite often. And so now the news and the story is on the front page of CowboyStateDaily.com. You can also see up in the right-hand corner of the screen that there is a subscribe now button. You can hit that and subscribe, and you can get this information. I received it bright and early this morning, and so super easy to be able to get that info from Cowboy State Daily. But again, they have approved the Trump administration's plan to rescind all taxpayer funding for NPR and PBS. Cowboy State Daily will follow this story closely and keep you in the know. Let's check in with our rodeo report. Yeehaw.
It's the Rodeo Roadshow on the Western Ag Network. Hi, everybody. I'm Will Rasmussen. Today, my great friend and colleague, rodeo announcer Wayne Brooks, 5-time announcer of the year. He's announced the National Finals Rodeo a dozen times, and I'm lucky enough to announce the California Rodeo Salinas in California, where we are right now. Some stuff, good stuff, from my great friend Wayne Brooks on the Roadshow next.
Hi, I'm Landon Nicodemus with Torrington Livestock Markets. As a livestock market owner and a member of the LMA, I believe it is time for our industry to align and drive meaningful changes that will safeguard a future for ranchers. I'm asking all who are hearing this to sign on to this effort as we work to achieve and maintain ag-friendly tax policy, improve risk management tools, access to labor, flexibility for livestock haulers, and create support for young and emerging livestock producers. Now is the time. Learn more and sign on at commongroundsummit.net.
The American Lamb Summit is headed to Moscow, Idaho, July 23rd through the 25th. This premier event is your opportunity to engage with all segments of the sheep industry as we explore the newest trends and opportunities to boost the competitiveness of the U.S. sheep market. And the Western Ag Network's coverage is sponsored by the American Sheep Industry Association. Since 1865, ASI has been representing the interests of U.S. sheep producers. For more information about the American Lamb Summit, visit lambboard.com.
Rodeo Roadshow this week, the great Wayne Brooks. We are on Highway 101 in California, somewhere between San Jose and Salinas, and we've both stayed in hotels for the last month and a half, and I was just thinking, Wayne, it's all glitz and glimmer, isn't it, this announces?
Neons and nylons, yeah. Yeah, big thick steaks and expensive wine. I leave 1st of June, get a week off in August, and then don't get home again till 1st of October. So it's the old you got to make hay while the sun shines, and you're the same way, I know. Yeah. I know, summertime's covered up, and we are two of the most blessed guys in the world.
That's what I was, yeah.
I think work.
Yeah, that's good. And we're headed, you just got done with the greatest show on dirt, I think they call it, up in Calgary Stampede. Talk about that.
Oh gosh, it's a high quality event because it's an invitational only. So they've got 3 groups of 30 contestants. Well, let me try that again here. 3 groups of 10 contestants in each event. So your grand total contestants is 210. So your quality control is over the top.
I'm Will Rasmussen on the Western Ag Network.
Thank you to the rodeo folks. I'm Shireen Herrera filling in for Jake, Cowboy State Daily Morning Show. Make sure you check out cowboystatedaily.com. We have a big weekend where I'm located in central Wyoming as we have our balloon rally happening. It's called the Balloon Rendezvous. Big deal. It's really just a busy weekend here in central Wyoming in general this weekend. So if you've ever thought of a weekend to maybe visit Wyoming or central Wyoming, this is one of the good ones. Again, we have a big balloon rally. A lot of ballooners love coming to Fremont County for this balloon rally. So they're up in the sky as far as I know currently. They have a big Friday night cruise with all these classic cars with the Rocky Mountain Rebels. It is Chad and I went our very first time dating. Now this will be our 3rd year going, and so it's something that's special to us and we really enjoy. But the downtown streets of Riverton get closed off. All kinds of vendors and cool stuff happens down there. They have live music and refreshments. But the two coolest parts of the Friday night of the balloon rally is the old classic cars, the Friday night cruise, the Rocky Mountain Rebels all roll in together. So the site is super cool. I love classic cars, love that portion. But also, depending on the weather, they do something called candle sticking. So the balloon baskets that they have, they set on the ground and they flip them to the side and then they torch up, I guess, not to down. That would be in front of people probably. But they torch the baskets all along the streets of Riverton at night. And so it's kind of a cool celebration. They also have a soapbox derby, which is kind of sketchy, scary, redneck, and tons of fun. And they do that down the big main street in Riverton. It has a huge hill. Some of these kids get going so fast. If I were their parents, I would be worried. But of course, they're all in helmets and padded up and stuff. But it's just kind of one of those Wyoming type of weekends. We have that going on, the balloon rally, like I mentioned, the Friday night cruise, the candle sticking, the soapbox derby, all of that goes on. They do a balloon glow on Saturday night for the balloon weekend. So again, it's just one of the best weekends to be here. And then they do launches all 3 days. Chad and I will be catching a balloon in the morning. I opted to not fly. I've flown twice and that's good enough for me. It was an amazing experience, but I want to give somebody else a chance. And also, Chad wants to go in a balloon together. He is 6'2", 6'3", 280 pounds, and I'm terrified of going in a hot air balloon with him. I'm like, you can go by yourself. How does that sound? We'll work that out for you. But we'll be chasing balloons tomorrow morning with the Rendezvous Balloon Rally here in Fremont County in central Wyoming. So they have that balloon glow, but also the balloon rally weekend. Now, remember, I mentioned it's extremely busy here this weekend, is the Lander Pig Roast. And Lander has a free community celebration where they roast some pork. They roast a pig, and then the community comes out and has some free lunch. They have live music, all kinds of vendors and fun. So it's something you can hit as you hit everything. The Rocky Mountain Rebels have an autocross weekend. So as I'm talking about it, I'm realizing, wow, this is one of the busiest weekends in Fremont County in central Wyoming. So that's where I'm located. So I wanted to kind of bring you into my world just a little bit here as we have a very busy weekend. If I wasn't filling in for Jake, I have my own morning show, but usually I knock off and go catch a balloon in the morning because they need like 4 or 5 people to help actually land the balloon safely and get it all wrapped up and packaged and get them on their way. So every balloon has to have kind of a team, and not just the team they travel with because they travel with somebody. They also have a team of volunteers wherever they're flying at locally. And so that's what we do. If you've ever been in Fremont County during the balloon rally, you're also able to help volunteer. All you do is show up early in the morning, about 5:45, and you find a balloon, you ask around and ask if anybody needs help. Sometimes they don't need any help, but most of the time you'll find a balloon that does. And it's pretty cool, and you get to be a part of the experience at the end. And if they have a first-time rider, they have this ceremony. It's very cool. So welcoming you to the Balloon Rally weekend. If you've never been here in central Wyoming, it's happening this weekend. You still have time to make it. Friday night cruise later tonight. I'm excited for. Like I said, this is something we go to every year. It's small town fun, and wouldn't have it any other way. So thanks for being here. Thanks for joining us. Cowboy State Daily Morning Show. I'm Shireen, filling in for Jake.
It's time to take a look at what's happening around Wyoming. From the Cowboy State Daily Newsroom, I'm Wendy Core. Wyoming leaders on Thursday announced they're challenging the order by which a judge has blocked the state's school choice program. Laramie County District Court Judge Peter Froelicher on Tuesday issued a preliminary injunction blocking the Steamboat Legacy Scholarship Program, while public school advocacy group Wyoming Education Association and a handful of parents challenge it in court. Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland reports that the state's appeal to the Wyoming Supreme Court was announced by Superintendent of Public Instruction Megan Degenfelder, who is a proponent of school choice.
It takes a few days or weeks, but yeah, in the coming weeks, they'll argue against the reasoning that Froelicher deployed. And before that, they'll ask the High Court to stay his decision, basically undo his decision while they evaluate the reasoning that led him to it.
Had it been allowed to go into effect, the program would have allocated a per-family maximum of $7,000 towards state contractor-held accounts for approved families to put toward private school tuition or homeschooling. A 49-year-old woman who acted as a mule to traffic meth, fentanyl, and cocaine to Wyoming from Colorado will spend up to 8 years in prison. Heather Marie Russell pleaded guilty Thursday to 10 drug-related charges. As part of the plea deal, Cowboy State Daily's Dale Killingbeck reports that Russell is agreeing to testify honestly against known and unknown co-conspirators in the enterprise that brought drugs from Colorado to Natrona County, then sold them to local buyers.
She apologized to the court and to the community for her actions. She said that she was thankful to be sober and that she wanted the judge to just go ahead and sentence her today. She didn't want a pre-sentence investigation or anything. So the judge sentenced her to concurrent sentences that will mean she'll serve up to 8 years in prison.
DCI's investigation of Russell tracked her traveling between Natrona County and Colorado to buy drugs. Agents did controlled buys from Russell starting in February 2024, and informants and co-conspirators pointed to Russell as a source for fentanyl. U.S. House Judiciary Committee member Harriet Hageman of Wyoming is investigating the prosecution of an Idaho ultra runner for going off a trail in Grand Teton National Park. 33-year-old Michelino Sinceri has never denied cutting the switchback during a run in the national park on September 2, 2024. It was his disclosure of the switchback cut on social media that caught the National Park Service's attention and resulted in a misdemeanor charge. Cowboy State Daily's Sean Berry reports that Hageman feels Sinceri's case is an example of overzealous prosecution.
It appears that even after the National Park Service sort of stepped away from this, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the District of Wyoming has been plowing straight ahead with this prosecution. One plea offer reportedly would have been 1,000 hours of community service and a 5-year prohibition from setting foot in the park. Harriet Hageman thinks it's an example of overcriminalization, where people who did things that they did not really know what the rules were, they thought were minor, are now being hit with some very serious penalties.
Hageman said the cut-through that Sinceri took was actually an alternate path, and she's questioning his prosecution altogether. I'll be back with more news right after this.
Find expert vascular care right here in Wyoming. Wyoming Interventional and Vascular Associates, or WIVA, is a division of Casper Medical Imaging and is home to experienced subspecialized physicians and physician assistants who provide comprehensive services to treat vascular disease. From PAD and AAA to venous disease, WIVA offers tailored solutions to get you back to enjoying the things you love. Schedule a consultation with WIVA today at caspermedicalimaging.net/WIVA or by calling 307-577-1003.
Nearly half the inmates in the Laramie County Detention Center have mental health conditions, and about 11% are considered extremely mentally ill. That's why, after 2 years and $700,000, the jail is opening the first special management unit in Wyoming. Cowboy State Daily's Claire McFarland explains that this jail pod is for inmates whose acute mental health issues require tight monitoring and extra care, but which is designed with good behavior incentives.
What was interesting to me is the way the architecture, its intent is bound up in its design. The officials at the jail were telling me, yeah, you can see sunlight. They're tempted by this sunlight, and some of them can even see a series of progressing, improving recreation areas culminating in the outdoor sunlight basked patio that makes them want to improve. It's good behavior that gets them out into each rec area.
Jail staffers have already identified whom to transition into it in the coming days, with the planned opening set for Friday. And that's today's news. Get your free digital subscription to Wyoming's only statewide newspaper by clicking on the daily newsletter button at cowboystatedaily.com. I'm Wendy Core for Cowboy State Daily.
Christopher Holton. I'm very active. It was a Saturday morning. Normally I go for my normal walk.
With no warning, Chris suffered a near-fatal heart attack. But thankfully, Brian Buckley, a bystander, saw him collapse and rushed to help.
He did this big gasp for air and then just stopped. It's like I went into autopilot. It's like all that training I did back in the day around CPR just magically came out of nowhere.
Because of the CPR training that Brian received, Chris did make it and didn't die on the trail that day. CPR training provided by the American Heart Association.
Looking at your hands, these two hands could save a life.
Being a father, you want to be around. You want to be around for your kids.
Heart disease is America's #1 killer. To learn more about how the American Heart Association helps save lives, go to helpheart.org.
Good morning. Yes, Cowboy State Daily Morning Show. Shireen filling in for Jake. I'm ready for the weekend and ready for the start of Cheyenne Frontier Days. Yeah, today is the day with Wyoming's very own Ian Munsick, who is on stage with Travis Tritt. Travis Tritt was my 28th birthday party. Went in the pit for Travis Tritt. Being in the pit for Travis Tritt. It was up in Montana. I think it was in Great Falls or Helena. One of those places, but I'll never forget. He puts on a great show. So Cheyenne Frontier Days kicks off officially the 129th daddy of them all, as we've heard Wendy Core say. So that kicks off today officially with events and music. Like I mentioned, Ian Munsick later tonight with Travis Tritt. So a lot of stuff happening from, the rodeo, carnival, the concerts this year. Bailey Zimmerman, Josh Ross, Luke Bryan, Priscilla Block, Brooks and Dunn, Chancey Williams, Cody Johnson, Randy Hauser, Megan Maroney with Waylon Wyatt, who, by the way, is extremely talented. So they didn't have Waylon announced for quite some time. So all kinds of fun with Cheyenne Frontier Days. That officially kicks off tonight. If you need tips, reminders, any of that, cfdrodeo.com is the place to go. Of course, cowboystatedaily.com as well. We'll have updates, information, and details if there's anything really important you need to know. But some folks are first timers for CFD, so they kind of do need to be in the know when it comes to what to do, how to navigate parking, rides, Ubers, Lyfts, shuttles, all of that information a lot of folks are unaware of. So I love the rodeo action every time with anything that has to do with this type of organization. So if you can make it to a rodeo at CFD, please do and cheer on the folks. As a matter of fact, Chancey Williams just shared on his social media as he's gearing up to play with Brooks and Dunn. So cool for Cheyenne Frontier Days. A throwback, a little flashback Friday of Chancey Williams riding bulls when he was younger at Cheyenne Frontier Days. So I love how it comes full circle. He went from riding bulls to performing on stage with Brooks and Dunn. So that'll be a great show. Again, the date for the B&D Chancey Williams show is next week, the 23rd. And stuff kicks off later tonight with Ian Munsick and Travis Tritt. So if you're heading to CFD, send Cowboy State Daily pictures, give them details. If you see anything crazy or funny, that's my thing, is I love knowing all the crazy, chaotic, insane things that you see or are a part of at Cheyenne Frontier Days. So again, cfdrodeo.com for those details and find more with Cheyenne Frontier Days. big story this morning, if you haven't seen cowboystatedaily.com, but we do have some details on the House voting to defund NPR and PBS. That has been an extremely hot topic. You can get the story and the details easily at cowboystatedaily.com. You can also hit that subscribe now button in the right-hand corner that you see on the screen up there above Bert and Ernie, and you'll get that information like I did first thing this morning. And this happened late last night. So somebody was up getting the news out to us, and I really appreciate that. So again, find these details and find the story, cowboystatedaily.com. I'm looking forward to a fun weekend, although it'll be hot. I think Dawn Day mentioned, I'm looking at my weather app here for what we have, about 90 for central Wyoming, 62 currently. Through the weekend, though, we'll be back in the 90s. So definitely a warm summer. If you're like me, you have way too many weeds. Got a mixture of the hot summer and some moisture, which I'll never complain about ever, unless it's the H word, which is hail, because we have crops, so we don't want that stuff. But I had so many weeds in my garden. I'm actually sporting a back injury because I went down to pull a really tall weed. It was about the size of me. That's how long I left these weeds, by the way. My fault. Went to pull it. I went to yank it out. I just felt something. Have you ever done that before where you just felt something happen and you're like, uh-oh, I'm getting old. And an hour later, I'm like, I can't. I also have a hard time getting out of the seat here, depending. So it feels a little bit better. I thought it might be worse, but not so bad as I thought this morning. But all the weeds in the garden, I had to do some like major weed pulling yesterday, which is a great source of exercise, but it also gave me the back injury. So I've got to figure out how to strengthen my back, build up my core, exercise more, which is never something I want to actually do, but really need to. So appreciate you being here. Cowboy State Daily Morning Show. Let's get a look at that forecast with Mr. Don Day.
It's Friday, TGIF. It's the 18th day of the month, 2025. This podcast brought to you by the Advocates Injury Attorneys. If you've been injured in an accident, don't face it alone. Get an experienced local Wyoming attorney on your side. Free consultations at WyomingAdvocates.com or call 307-800-1952. You deserve an advocate. Well, the elk is looking up, checking out the weather, and, well, we should. We got a small monsoonal plume coming our way. This will give us a general increase in thunderstorm coverage. Got my fingers and toes crossed that for those of you in western Colorado, western Wyoming, and parts of Utah and New Mexico can get some badly needed rain. There is moisture available for rain-producing thunderstorms, but lately they've just been starting fires with a lot of lightning strikes. A general warming trend after unseasonably cool weather this week will head into the weekend and next week. On Wednesday, you know that Rapid City had a high of only 56 degrees? Quite remarkable, that cold front, but now it's exiting the region. There's some interesting things to watch next week, especially the Front Range and adjacent plains towards the middle of next week, and we'll show you why we're kind of keeping a close eye on things. Yesterday, we did see the clouds thin out, but they hung low as moisture still behind that cold front hung around, but did make for a beautiful sunset with some virga there and some weak showers around the Casper area. Then a great shot there from Grand Teton National Park. As we look at the drought monitor, wanted to spend a little bit of time on this to kind of highlight what's going on, because one thing that will drive you crazy, and I know it's driving some people crazy, is that precipitation never falls evenly in the Intermountain West and the adjacent high plains. You have winners, you have losers, and a lot of times, sometimes you just seem like you can't catch a break when it comes to rain. But the latest drought monitor shows several things, and a lot of times to really understand the current situation is to go back in time a little bit. But generally speaking, since spring, there has been really big improvements right here. I mean, really big improvements in drought conditions. But along and west of the Continental Divide, it's been a different story. And if you notice, there's this bridge, this peninsula of dryness that is sticking out of east central Wyoming into Nebraska's panhandle and into central areas of South Dakota, where drought conditions still are kind of hanging on tough, and then the western slope as well. So let's go back in time. This is May 6th. This is when we went through March and April with very very unimpressive precipitation in the region. Then things really turn the corner beginning the month of May and certainly into June and into early July in some areas. But this area I want to show you right here, we'll focus on first. We had talked earlier in videos that droughts are like puddles. The droughts tend to shrink along the edges, and then the last area to get out of the drought is in the middle of the puddle. And this really, that example I gave you is really showing up here when we kind of look especially at this area here where the last area to get, or hopefully to get precipitation, is going to be developing. So this is for early May. You can see western slope, western areas of Wyoming dry, but as you'll see in a minute, drier now. If we go and take a look at where we are now with the latest drought monitor, you can see there's been big improvements here, but western Wyoming and western Colorado have seen drought conditions worsen while they got a whole lot better right here. But notice this little patch right here in Platte County, Wyoming, and northeastern Albany County, along the Laramie River, then part of the North Platte system. That is the middle, okay? That's the middle of the puddle, kind of right here. And the middle of that puddle is this not getting the precipitation that other areas had, like southeastern Wyoming, the Front Range of Colorado, and then of course the wet areas of northeastern Wyoming since spring in many locations. Then the western slope has gotten conditions, the drought conditions, if you look at the change in the last 10 weeks, the green and the blue areas show where the rain has really returned and drought conditions have really improved. The yellow shows where drought conditions have gotten worse. So it's a hodgepodge across the Intermountain West. And then you have islands. You end up with islands, like there's a little island here. There's that island right here in Platte County. It just, rain never has and never will fall evenly where everybody gets into the action. There's always winners and losers in the casino of precipitation that we live in. Satellite photos that we have right now this morning show that the cooler, moist air with that cold front has advanced into the plains. You can look really carefully. You can see that deeper moisture plume right there, and it really shows up. There it is, 2 areas of subtropical moisture kind of coming up from the south here. Then there's this arch right here. And this arch is where the thunderstorms will be most active this afternoon, but also an area right here, slowly moving to the north and then to the northeast as we progress through the day today. And the precipitable water is impressive. So we're well over 100% of average. Then there's that deeper axis right here. If you're underneath this axis, there is the likelihood of some really good rain-producing showers and thunderstorms, really anywhere in the boundary that I've drawn right here and right here. And you can really see that in the storm, go back here to the Storm Prediction Center of where they think the most active and strongest thunderstorms will end up by late afternoon and evening. And it's right along this axis. That's where that moisture plume will be by later today, along with the stronger daytime heating. Tomorrow, it's more along and aligned the Front Range and then out onto the eastern plains. So today and tomorrow, there's going to be a fair amount of subtropical moisture and thunderstorm activity. By Sunday, there's a punch of drier air coming in, and then we see the moisture that's deeper for the thunderstorms. That'll be more out into the plains. Let's step through the next 3 days, today through Sunday, in terms of thunderstorms. So here's where the thunderstorm action is going to be most likely today, and where some of these thunderstorms are potentially going to be strong in some locations. They'll continue into the evening and nighttime hours. On Saturday, you can see that arch now is more east. There'll be mountain thunderstorms still on the backside of it in the middle here. And then as we get into the day on Sunday, there's that bigger push east out into the plains. So really it's today and Saturday where thunderstorms will be most active, more out into there'll be mountain thunderstorms still on the backside of it in the middle here. And then as we get into the day on Sunday, there's that bigger push east out into the plains. So really it's today and Saturday where thunderstorms will be most active, more out into the northwest, the high here in the northwest, the high here in the south. What I want you to look at, and this is what we're watching for next week. Don't know if this is going to come to fruition, but you always look at weather charts like this and you look for patterns. Because what we see here with the colors, the brighter, redder, pinker colors show the warmer parts of the atmosphere at 18,000 feet. As you get further north, as you'd expect, you get colder. And you have the contrast between the colder air up here, the warmer air down here. These black lines represent where the winds are going to flow at 18,000 feet. And where you see little dimples, where you see troughs, where you see high pressure ridges, you start to look for patterns. What I see right here is something interesting. What we're seeing right here, that little dimple right here, is part of the tropical it really has not evolved into a tropical storm, but it has caused a lot of rain along the Gulf Coast. And it is traveling westward because it's caught up in the circulation of this high. Now, this is for Sunday. So that little, what you see that dimple is actually a subtropical wave that got started here and has just gone like this. It's heading westward, which is interesting. Now, we'll fast forward here a couple of days beyond Sunday and show you why we're watching it. As we get into Wednesday of next week, see the dimple? There it is again. So basically, it will have traveled, believe it or not, from here to here over the course of a week. You might think, well, how could that happen? Well, it happens because the counterclockwise circulation around that high. So we're going to watch this because this system gets caught up around the high like this, and believe it or not, it's going to go all the way around. It could go full circle. That's why the weather's fun to watch. If you pay attention to little patterns like this on forecast charts, you start to look for patterns in the 500 millibar flow. So what we watch here is the spinning motions of the atmosphere, what we call vorticity. So let's focus in a little bit on this for next Wednesday. So this would be Cheyenne Day during Cheyenne Frontier Days. So if it does make it all the way into New Mexico, this little upper level low right here, the air is not only moving counterclockwise aloft, but there's a spinning motion called vorticity. Think of a
We're actually going to have Don Day join us here in the Zoom room because he joins every Friday morning, and I didn't quite realize that. I forgot. Don, how are you?
I am wonderful. How are you?
I'm doing good. I just played your forecast because I forgot you joined the show at 7:20. So we get to talk about you this morning instead of forecast because we just did the forecast and you did a wonderful job per usual. How's your Friday morning going?
Well, good. You know, any Friday morning is a good morning, really, in my opinion, because it's Friday.
That's right. That's right. And what do you have planned for the weekend, Don?
Well, you know, a little bit of everything. I've got a trip to Rapid City and back today, and then probably we'll head to the hills, go up to the mountains this weekend. That's why at this time of year, every weekend is so precious, you know, because of our 3-week summer. It seems like that we have. So
true.
I'll head to the hills.
I love it. I love it. All right, Don. Well, we talked about your forecast. You mentioned stuff for Cheyenne Frontier Days. I know folks are looking forward to that. It looks like things should be pretty warm, which is normal for CFD, right?
Well, yeah. Two things about Cheyenne Frontier Days. Usually it's the warmest time of year and thunderstorms. And
Yes.
they always say in Wyoming, you know, there's two seasons, winter and construction season. Well, in Cheyenne, there's winter construction season and Cheyenne Frontier Days. And it does tend to bring warm, muggy conditions and late day thunderstorms. And that's exactly how it looks like it's going to start.
Well, you know what? CFD, Cheyenne, they're used to those storms rolling off that front range. So, yeah, if you're going to CFD, I always say there's some great reminders and tips and tricks as far as parking and all of that shuttle information goes. But Dawn is the one you want to listen to. You want to subscribe to that podcast. You want to make sure you're in the know weather-wise. I know every girl wants to look cute and everything, but sometimes when you check the weather and you know what's going on, Mr. Don Day, you might want to pack a rain jacket or a sweater potentially, depending on what's in store.
You know, it's interesting you brought that up because one of the funnest things at Cheyenne Frontier Days, and I think this is true for any county or the state fair, is just look at the wardrobes that you see.
Yes.
You see some really wild outfits this time of year. And to your point, a lot of times they're not dressed correctly for the weather.
Yeah, exactly. So, like Don said, that's something that's great with CFD too, is a little people watching, but just being prepared for the weather. Like Don mentioned,
Right.
it's, oftentimes they have a couple of thunder boomers that roll through. I do love those pictures though, Don. I know you're a weather nerd, and I love lightning and weather pictures. And so sometimes CFD gets some of the coolest photos when those storms roll over that front range
Yes.
and behind the stage. So I do like those, but I don't like it to interrupt any of the entertainment, of course. So
Of course, right, exactly. Night shows around here, it's always a good idea to bring have a poncho or a small umbrella just in case.
all right, Don. Well, it's always a pleasure chatting with you. Thanks for taking the time. Hardest working man in weather has his podcast, the Don Day Weather Podcast. Joins the Cowboy State Daily Morning Show every morning. And it was just good to chat with you, Don.
Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye. All right, great to have Don on the show this morning, and I kind of forgot that he joins every single morning and allows us the chance to find out more about what's going on in the world of weather. Cowboy State Daily Morning Show, I'm Shireen, filling in for Jake.
From Yellowstone to Devil's Tower, the Bighorn Mountains to the Teton Range, Cheyenne to Sheridan, Rawlins to Ralston, Cowboy State Daily Morning Show covers the state like no other radio show or podcast. We love Lovell. We're eager to share the stories of story radio show or podcast. We